This is Health Unfiltered, the podcast where we cut through the bullshit and get honest about fitness, nutrition, and mental wellness.
Hey, Megan, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Definitely, it's a pleasure to have you on. I'm really excited to speak with you today. We're gonna get into mental wellness and we're gonna talk about how you get there with yoga and meditation. But before we get into that, do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself so we can get to know you a little more?
Sure. Thank you. So, I am leading a global movement of other female entrepreneurs who care so much about how they feel that they make time and space for themselves first every day. So, I love to help other people create an amplified morning routine that allows them to start the day grounded, happy, energized, in line with their vision, in line with their goals, so that they can show up intentionally as that version of themselves. So, really showing up for themselves first so that they can serve at a really high level in their business and relationships. And so I came to doing this because I didn't do that for a long time. I burned the candle at all the ends and I ended up completely exhausted and burnt out and resentful and overwhelmed and wanting to throw in the towel for the 842nd time. And
Mm.
so I recognized that I felt out of alignment. I mean, personal trainer, yoga instructor that wasn't doing any of that because I was so exhausted. And so for me, that was a little bit of a line in the sand sort of moment, if you will. And it was an inspiration to do things a little bit differently in a more sustainable way, in a way that felt like it was really aligned with my values of integrity and authenticity, of, practicing what I teach and all that. And so what I did was took the elements of yoga, which I, up to now have been about 25 years of practicing. So yoga and personal training and exercise and my love of movement, as well
Hmm.
as breath work and mental fitness, to create an amplified morning routine that really checks the box of all the boxes, right? Spiritual, mental, emotional, physical health, all at once, right? The most important box that we have to check every day. And for me, that became a staple because as an entrepreneur, and for many people that can relate, I mean, just even as a human, life is stressful sometimes and there's ups and downs. And so it's important to have a tool set that we can take along with us wherever we go. And because I support other business owners as a community, we have a higher prevalence of mental health challenges, right? 72% are known to have ADD, ADHD, depression, bipolar anxiety, or a combination, right? Like me, I have a combination bladder. And so having a tool set that is both verified and well-researched and long-lasting in its understanding, like yoga and exercise, they, very validated from a scientific perspective, that is also really impactful for us as a human so that we can navigate these challenges. So making it fun and playful and having it be something that people enjoy and they look forward to, and so they actually do it. That's really me in a nutshell.
I love that. How did you first discover yoga?
Actually, it was when I was in university. So I'm from Canada originally. And so I had a roommate at the time who I've always loved exercise and movement. And so I was going to the gym and I do all the classes. And so I was doing a class called, oh, I'm going to forget what it's called now. But anyways, it was a fusion class and it was yoga and Pilates, Tai Chi, body flow. And
Oh,
so
cool.
I went to the class. I was loving the class. And so my roommate at the time, I invited her to the class and I said, you got to come to this yoga class. You're going to love it. She came to the class and her mother was a yoga instructor. And she's like, I don't know what that was, but it was not yoga. You need to go to a yoga class. So for me, it was kind of, okay, sure, I'll go. And like many people was a little bit like, maybe a little intimidated, maybe a little
Hmm.
intrigued. But for me, I've always loved that things that challenge me in unique ways. And, there's a physical element for sure that's really challenging that people underestimate. But for me, it has come to be a practice of the inner challenge of witnessing myself and my patterns, learning to really focus my mind using the different tools of the practice. And really, as it is with many things, is cultivate self-awareness and self-compassion and self-love. And so, yes, the physical practice is why I started, but, why I stayed was for all of those benefits. And my joke is, I came for the yoga booty and I stayed for the inner peace. And so that's the short answer.
Nice. Yeah, I really enjoy yoga. I try to do it at least once a week. I got into it. I was doing a permaculture practitioner training course. And one morning, one of the other participants asked a few people if they were interested in doing some yoga. And I never had done it and I was interested in trying it. And we all went to, the space outside and we followed along and it was pretty cool. And I never really got into it much after that. But I was in Phoenix for a few months last year and was part of a gym that had classes. And I started going and I started really enjoying it. And they had hot yoga, and that was extremely challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do hot yoga? Do you like doing hot yoga? Do you recommend people to do
Well, I live in Hawaii, so pretty much all of our yoga is hot,
it?
is what I tell
Right?
people. Yeah, I I would say that it's, each modality and style of yoga has benefits.
Yeah.
And whatever you're drawn to is great. And so my personal opinion, again, it's based on, what they understand of what happens to our body when we're in a really hot room, is it can really
Hmm.
overload your heart and over challenge your heart based on the
Yeah.
demands of the room. Compared to the demands that the poses are asking of your muscles and your tissues. And so because most people are chronically dehydrated because we all drink a lot of caffeine for the most part, it
Hmm.
can be a bit of a not ideal situation. And so there's that. And then also when it comes to flexibility in a warm environment, it's kind of think of like, when you have a chocolate bar and you can, it starts out really hot and you can, kind of break it off and then it starts to melt if you're melting it on the stove. Your tissues start to do that. They start to soften and they get more supple, which is why, part of the benefit is to deepen our flexibility for sure. And in a hot room, that happens more. And so
Right.
if people don't know their edge and their boundary, there's a higher risk of issue because when we pull farther, we're usually going beyond the boundary of the muscle and pulling into the connective tissue, which is not designed to stretch. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, that's just, my opinion on it, but it's something for people to explore and just be really mindful when you do it and then yeah, give it a go. I mean, there's lots of great benefits aside from those little caveats.
So you want to be careful if maybe you have heart condition or if you're not used to stretching, and definitely make sure you're hydrated. Is that kind of your recommendations as far as hot yoga goes?
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Awesome. And I feel like a lot of people aren't familiar with yoga and they think it might just be about the poses. Is there more to yoga than just doing the poses?
Yes, so there's yoga, the poses, that's only one aspect of the yoga practice.
Hmm.
So there's said to be seven other limbs of the tree that is yoga.
Oh,
And so
wow.
it's more of a lifestyle and a practice and an awareness and a tool set than it is just a physical practice. And the
Hmm.
physical practice, which is so incredible because there's so many hormonal balance, bone density, muscle tissue, like stress reduction, better sleep, happier, help, human to be around, stronger posture, all of that, incredible benefit. But the physical practice is said to prepare us to be able to sit and meditate. And that is really the goal, is to be able to cultivate the connection, the intersection between your mind and your body and your spirit, which is what yoga is. And
Yeah.
so the physical practice prepares us to be able to sit still, which for many of us, especially kind of highly active, hyperactive sort of people,
Hmm.
and even in our modern day where we're used to being on the go, go, go and living on, a lot of stress most of the time, that can be really challenging for people to sit still. And so that being said, there's many different aspects to the practice, and it really is simply like if you boil it down, it's cultivating awareness of how you're moving, how you're holding yourself, how you're thinking. And so using the breath, using the asana practice, so the physical practice, to just be a lens that you look at yourself through, but really learning to look from the lens of the heart. So to be
Hmm.
compassionate and kind and gentle, like we are with other people, like we would be with a child or an animal,
Yeah.
tend to have the opposite technique when it comes to ourself.
Right.
So yoga really is ultimately, my teacher always says, and I say it all the time now too is that yoga is a practice of self-awareness, self-acceptance, and self-love. And that's the journey of the practice.
Nice. I like that. I had no idea. I knew the breathing was a big part of it, making the breathing with the movement and working those together. But I had no idea it went so much deeper than that. It's really interesting to
Yeah.
know. Um, do you have a favorite yoga pose?
Um, yeah, I mean, I have favorites for a lot of different reasons. I guess the favorite is for me would be favorite in the sense that it's helped me and supported me the most, I'd say, is Warrior Two. And a
Hmm.
close second to that would be Shavasana, which is the one you do at the end where you just relax, because that one is really hard for me to do. So like that one I've mastered. The other ones where you're doing things that are really active, nailed it. So for the warrior poses, that for me has been an incredible tool set because
Yeah.
there is a really deep and interesting story that was the inspiration behind the poses that really unlocks a lot of the architecture and the activations and what they're truly teaching us. That
Hmm.
has been a huge part of my journey and a huge part of my work. And I even wrote a book about it. Like, so, that for me, like the warrior poses are really, I'd say my favorite for that reason.
Nice. And you call yourself a mental health warrior and advocate. What what um what does that mean and why is that so important to you?
Well, as I mentioned, as a community, entrepreneurs are at a higher rate of having mental health challenges. And so, as someone who does myself, when I first started to recognize that about myself and how it was impacting my business, and then hearing those statistics from the University of Berkeley in California in the US, and starting to recognize like 72%, that's a lot. And so, in that recognition of, wow, it's interesting to me that, as a population, we have this sort of creative energy, all of that. And so that gets
Hmm.
balanced. There's the opposite side to the pendulum. And so using these tools to help myself stay centered and to navigate those, challenges and those ups and downs that are inevitably part of the roller coaster of life really became something that I became really passionate about because of my own challenges, of seeing my father have his challenges and seeing so many of my friends have their challenges. And so for me, it's an important conversation to be had because if we step outside the entrepreneur community, even I don't even know what it is as as a human family and human population, but the rates of mental health challenges are extremely high. And so whatever those are, right? It's like we're all on the spectrum somewhere of something or
Hmm.
other. Like, let's be
Hmm.
real. And so I think it's really important to have an open conversation about this. And there's been so much of a initiative around that, in the last few decades, which is beautiful, to start to eradicate some of the stigma around it so that people don't feel so isolated and they don't feel so that internalized shame that can happen when we, have these challenges that were at once labeled like, problem or what have you. So for me, as someone who is very much walking that path myself, supporting others that are walking that path as well, for me, that's what it means to be a mental health warrior is that, or an advocate, is that it's that being part of the conversation and walking arm in arm with people and recognizing like, we all choose our own bag, we've all got our
Hmm.
stuff that we deal with. And so just being a little more transparent, because that's huge for me, is the authenticity and that transparency and just being transparent about, how we're all going through our thing and not living in this like filtered reality of social media where everything looks perfect and you're just, da 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 da. And so yeah, that's what it means to me.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, it's so unattainable to have that perfect life that people portray online. It's really a shame that people don't share more of, the full picture of their lives and their struggles. Um, I struggled a lot with depression and food addiction, and what really helped me was meditation. I
Mm.
started meditating several years ago, and I found it just to help me find a sense of calm and to have more mental bandwidth to deal with things throughout the day. It's really incredible. And it was a little scary to sit down for the first time and close my eyes and try to focus on my breathing. Um, but after I did it, I felt so good. I stuck with it, and I really advocate for that as well. I think mental health is the most important component to overall health. And yeah, what do you think about meditation, and do you believe everyone should try a practice of it?
I think it's incredibly powerful. And as you said, it can be really intimidating. And as someone who admittedly avoided it for a long time because I felt like I quote unquote couldn't do it because my
Hmm.
brain is like a troop of caffeinated squirrels sometimes.
I
It's
hear
just,
you. I feel you on
it's a
that one.
lot, right? And I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do it, and then I didn't do it. And then it was part of the battle of like, well, some kind of yoga teacher you are, you don't even know how to do it. I'm like, okay, all right, I hear you. And then, for me, it was my grandmother actually was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia, which is a type of dementia where there's plaque formations in the brain. And so, of
Hmm.
course, me being me, wanting to research and prevent that from happening to myself and learning to support other people, I did some research and guess what? The most impactful thing you can do for the health and the function and the structure of your brain is actually a combination of cardiovascular exercise to develop new brain cells and
Mm.
meditation, challenge them so they mature and stick around. But
Oh,
meditation is
wow.
widely researched when it comes to the impact of brain function and our ability to concentrate and so many beautiful benefits of it. And so, of course, after I read that, I was sold and back on the train. And so then for me and for many people, it's finding something that works for you because the classical, you know, portrayal of meditation of somebody sitting on a cushion with the incense and they're doing the mudras and they've got the sounds and what have you,
Hmm.
that might work for some people, but it doesn't work for everybody. And it didn't
Yeah,
work for me until I learned how to go deeper beyond the chatter of the squirrels. And so it's learning how to do things that help you to access that state of feeling calm, feeling centered, feeling grounded. And that might be as simple as, counting your breath, using your fingers, using mantra. Like they don't have to be Sanskrit words. They can be whatever, feels aligned to your viewpoint of, whatever nature, God, universe, like what sacred words to you, like it could be any words, right? Or breath work.
hmm,
Essentially, we want to have a tool. And for some people, it's as easy as just following the breath in and out. And for other people, that's not a thing, right? And so it's all good because we're all different. And that's really
yeah,
amazing. And so, from the health and happiness perspective, there is just so much incredible research I mean, thousands of years of cultures doing it for a long time that can really validate the fact that, it's good for you. And so I would say if you're open to it, go for it, but not feel pressurized because it's like, if you're doing it just because you've listened to us and you've, read a thing on Harvard that talks about it and da 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 da. Sure, that's great. I hope that starts the motivation, but I
hmm,
think it's something, when it comes from your heart of that desire to know yourself better, going full circle to what we talked about earlier, it's an
yeah,
opportunity to be present. And that can be scary for some people, right? And especially when
definitely.
we have mental health challenges going on of like, I feel like I'm so in here, why would I go in deeper? And so that it can be a bit of a block sometimes. And so just know that it doesn't have to be what you see on Instagram. There's so many different ways that you can do it and still really get the benefits from it.
Nice. Yeah, are there any tips that you would recommend for people that want to start meditating, but they're just, unsure how to start, or they're maybe a little apprehensive?
Yeah, I would say that a really nice little like jump into the ocean that is meditation is breath work, to be honest.
Hmm.
Because it is really that pathway into yourself is your breath, right? And so for a lot of people, just using different breathing patterns can really help you to focus. And when you notice, when you're just counting your inhale for 5 and counting your exhale for 5, which is a very simple but very powerful breathing practice, you just stay with the counting. And when you notice that you're thinking about broccoli, you recognize that and you come back, right? And that's,
Hmm.
what it is that it's like I equate meditation to training a puppy. And you can give the puppy a toy and tell it to sit and stay. So that's your mind with the counting of the breath, sit and stay. And then you walk away and then you come back and it's peed on the floor and it's scraping the wall and it's doing all sorts of crazy stuff, right? And so that's essentially what it is that, your thoughts are going to happen. That's the way that the mind works, is it's
Right.
just, and that's what it does. And so
Yeah.
what we're looking for is the gap between them. And then when we have the tool to stay in the gap, and when we catch ourselves thinking about broccoli or, whatever, then we just notice it and then we come back. But it's the way that we catch ourselves, because the way we do one thing is the way we do everything, right? And so if we catch ourselves and we're like, I suck at this, I should never meditate again. What am I even doing? Notice that. And then we come back and we are compassionate because, of course, we might get frustrated, but we would be compassionate and kind to the puppy, right? And
Yeah.
so it's like, okay, come back over here, sit down.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's that learning to treat ourselves with gentleness and that compassion and that kindness that we often will so easily give to others. It's a practice, right? It's a training ground for all of that.
Definitely. Yeah. That's why they call it a practice.
Yes.
Trying to wrangle those squirrels, those
Yeah.
intrusive
Wrangle
thoughts
squirrels.
that come in.
No more Pepsi for you.
Right. I've heard a recommendation that when you're trying to sit and meditate, that when you do have a thought come in, you can imagine it floating down a river and
Mm.
have floating away and kind of just coming back and centering yourself and trying to refocus again. I think that can be really helpful.
Yeah, that's a beautiful analogy. And another one is, being out in wherever, like a field or at the beach or something, and you're just enjoying the clear blue sky, and then a cloud
Hmm.
comes in front of the sun and blocks, and then you're just using your awareness to move it beyond so that you can come back to that state of connection. And yeah, and that's just it. It's just tracking the thought and then just, oh, what was I just thinking about? Okay. And that's really the beauty of it, is there's lots of ways,
Hmm.
there's many paths up the mountain, as they say.
Definitely. Yeah, it's so strange how you'll be sitting there meditating and then all of a sudden a thought comes in and you just start thinking about it and then you're like, wait, no, I'm supposed to be not thinking about things, and you just kind of
Mhm.
come back, and it's it's fun, and I really enjoy it. I think a lot of people could find benefit from it. So you advocate for simplifying your morning routine, or amplifying your morning routine with 3 simple steps. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, and that's another thing, in addition to yoga and meditation, that we hear a lot about, of, oh, you should have a morning routine.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, the thing is that you already do have a morning routine. It's how impactful it is and
Right.
how meaningful it is. Is it grabbing your phone and, starting to scroll until you get triggered or hungry, and then you're like, oh, I should go meditate, and then you're sitting there meditating and just pacing back and forth mentally. So that might be your morning routine, right? And so how can you amplify it in that you make it more impactful for
Hmm.
you as an incredible, energetic, spiritual being having a human experience, who's doing things, who's got a vision, who's got goals? How can you use it as a tool set, as an opportunity to really get anchored? That's really what it's about.
Yeah.
And so the 3 pillars of amplifying your morning routine, that's an acronym. So it's AMR. The
Hmm.
first one is to align your mind. And so aligning your mind with your vision, with your goals, with the
Hmm.
reality that you want to create for yourself. And that's where meditation comes in. Maybe you want to meditate, or another form of meditation is visualization, using the creative aspect of your imagination to see and feel and be in that moment of whatever it is, right? When you hit number 1 on the podcast charts, or whatever it is that you see for yourself. And so being in that moment, and this isn't like a way out there thing, right? We hear so many successful people, incredibly well-renowned, well-respected athletes. So many people talk about how the impact of visualization. So aligning your mind is that first one. And that can be, again, maybe it's through prayer or journaling, or some people do tapping.
Hmm.
And so whatever you like there, but just it's really the intention is to get yourself connected to that future, the feeling of your future and the version of you that you are feeling inspired to become. And so that's the reasoning behind that aspect. And so that, we what we connect to and what we practice, we become, we activate that in ourselves. And so that's the first one is align your mind. And then
Hmm.
the second component is once you know who that version of you is that is living in that reality and the feeling of it and how they walk and how they talk and how they show up and all those things, then we use that knowledge to fully activate that in your body because this is where you bring it into your body and you give it form. So the M is move your body because in
Hmm.
case you forgot, you're not a rock or a tree. And so it's really important to have movement and energy. And so, of course, we could look at this, from a productivity and a performance point of view, because there's lots of stuff that, speaks to the importance of exercise in the morning. But it can also be from the point of view of you want to feel strong, you want to feel healthy, you want to feel happy. And especially from the mental health perspective, it's such an important tool. It's medicine, right? It's medicine in and of itself. And so it's a great complement to anything else that you might be using or doing for yourself, right? And so move your body, but do it with that intentionality of activating that energy of like, this is who I am, this is how I want to feel, and like feel that strength, feel that power. So you're not just doing the squats. It's like you can bring in that element of intention, which is
Hmm.
super impactful. And then finally, what we're doing is we align our mind, move our body. And while you're doing that, you're rewiring your system. So your nervous system
Hmm.
is basically the governing factor in all areas and parts of your life. It
Yeah.
influences emotions and your thoughts and your actions and everything. And so what you're doing there is when you are using the tools of yoga, meditation, whatever it is you're doing to move your body, is you're regulating your nervous system, right? You're bringing yourself into a connected place so that
Hmm.
when challenges happen, you can rise to the challenge, but you're not up there and you're not wound up and you're not, squirreling it out. You can bring yourself back down. And so, a regulated nervous system is not just calm and chill all the time. It's actually one that can respond and then come back to that steady state without
Yeah.
needing to shut down or having to freak out. And, we all have our moments, like, let's be real. But
Hmm.
what we're doing there is creating the familiarity with the first pillar. You are giving yourself that felt experience. So there's a familiarity with this reality that you want to create for yourself, because until your brain perceives it as familiar, it won't perceive it as safe, and it will stop you from doing anything that's related to that, expansion and that, next level, up leveling, whatever it is you're doing. Um,
Right.
it'll stop you, right? It's protecting you, which thankfully it's doing, but not necessarily conducive to you wanting to do the big things you want to do. So how can you rewire your system to essentially become that version of yourself, right?
Hmm.
And evolve through these different pillars. So those are the pillars.
Nice. So the first pillar, intention, does that include like doing self affirmations?
Yeah, yeah. Align your mind definitely includes affirmations. But important to note is that when it comes to affirmations, just the statement itself is on the level of the mind. And
Mm,
really important that it becomes anchored and activated in your body, because that's where your nervous system is. And so
yeah.
it's not enough to just have like, I am healthy, I am wealthy, and just like repeating it to yourself. Because yes, that's the electrical signal that you're sending out. But if you are not connected and actually in that elevated emotional state, then you're not truly resonating at that frequency, if you will, like
Hmm.
if you want to talk about it from alignment perspective. So it's really important that affirmations actually are anchored and come from the body. And even better is when they come from your vision. So it's that, you're getting that insight and the inspiration from the vision of what you want to create. And so that you
Yeah.
can really weave that into your life through the affirmations and the statements. And so we call them power statements, because then it's so much more impactful and so much more powerful when you're making that
Hmm.
statement to the universe and to yourself. Um, yeah,
I love that. That's great. I
thank
think
you.
that can be really powerful as well. Um, so is there such thing as self-care overwhelm? Is that
For sure. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, so self-care overwhelm is something that can happen to a lot of people, right? If you hear us talking now and you're like, okay, and now I'm supposed to go meditate and I'm doing my affirmations and I'm journaling,
Hmm.
and it can turn into this whole like, ooh, shut down. I don't want to do it,
You got your
and
singing bowls and your
yeah,
Palo
exactly.
Santo and
Right? You got the whole thing. You're like, am I supposed to go to work or am I just doing this now?
right? It'd be nice, but
I
some of
know.
us have to
Yeah,
go to work.
exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so that's the thing, right? And then if you look at even from the perspective of like your physical health of, your cardio and your core and your strength and your balance and your flexibility, and it's like, whoa, it can be a lot. And
Yeah.
so that's where using your AMR, your amplified morning routine, using these tools and really integrating all of those different aspects of mind, body, spirit can become something that is not only fun and playful, but a little more efficient. So it doesn't take you 3 hours to do all of it. And that's where, allowing you to get out of that sense of overwhelm or trying to figure it out on YouTube and just getting to like suck down a rabbit hole of golden retriever videos or whatever. Yeah, it happens. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's super common.
Yeah. That's good to know. There's so much going on in the world today. There's social media and everyone's pressured with work and stressed out, and some people don't do any self-care and some people too much. It sounds like with anything, you need to find the balance.
1,000%. Yeah, it's a balance for sure. Yeah.
And so you have a book, The Warrior's Journey.
Hmm.
What kind of stuff can we expect to find in your book?
Yeah, thank you. Well, the book itself is based on the story that I mentioned earlier, the tale that inspired the warrior poses. And
Hmm.
so it's all about how the yoga practice helps us to create the inner shifts that are necessary to see the outer results that we want in our life and in our business when it
Yeah.
comes to entrepreneurs. So, of course, the tool set applies to everyone, but because of who I serve, it's through the lens of how these tools and the different qualities of the warrior that we activate through the poses, like strength and courage and openness
Hmm.
and resiliency, how they actually show up and how we activate them in the poses, but how they become an integral part of the journey that we're on as a human who's navigating all the ups and downs of life and
Yeah.
entrepreneurship, so that they are tools that you use anywhere, anytime, right? Because we practice them on the mat, but most of our day is not on the yoga mat, right? It's doing things. And so that's the book. It's really helping you to experience the poses and the practice in a deeper way, not necessarily going physically deeper in the poses, but going
Right.
internally deeper because of helping you to understand the different aspects, the architecture of like, oh, your arms, when your arms are out like that in Warrior Two, they actually represent the swords that the warrior carries. So when you're holding
Oh.
them, you're holding these tools from your heart. And
Hmm.
what you're doing there is you're creating this energy for yourself so that you're carving a pathway on your own journey and recognizing that you have these tools. You get to practice them, you get to sharpen them, you get to be intentional with how you use them. And so it's learning about it from the lens of these poses and this story.
Nice. I'll have to check that out. I'd love to learn more. Where can we find your book?
Well, if you go to the warriorsjourneybook.com, then
Hmm.
you will get connected with me first, and then I'll send you the link to grab it on Amazon, but I'll also send you a bonus meditation that's infused with the magic of Maui. So at the beginning of the book, there's a blessing for everyone on their journey. And so the blessing is read at a really beautiful beach. So you get to kind of pretend that you're on Maui while you're getting the blessing. So it's a fun little meditation as
Very
well.
cool.
Link to the
Look
book.
forward to checking that out, and we'll definitely put the link in the show notes.
Cool.
And you have a podcast too, right?
I do. I
Awesome.
do. Yes.
What's the name of your podcast?
The Purposeful Powerhouse Podcast, the tools to live, move, and show up on purpose every day.
Awesome. I love it. So
Thank you.
what else is there to know about you, Megan? What else do you like to do for fun?
Well, I love to travel. I'm going to Japan on Tuesday.
Awesome. What part are you
Yeah.
going to?
I'm sorry.
What part of Japan are you visiting?
Well, we're going to a bunch of spots. We're landing in Tokyo and then we're going to Osaka and Kyoto and Nara. I think that's what we have so far. We're going for two
Sweet.
weeks, so we want to
How
have some
fun.
nice amount of time in each place, but not try to overwhelm ourselves with seeing everything.
Definitely. That's not too far from you in Hawaii, right? How long is the plane ride to Japan from there?
It looks closer than it is. It's about
Yeah.
9 hours.
Okay. A little
I know my
further
sister and
for
I were talking about that this morning. She's like, "It looks close, right?" I was like, "Yeah, it looks close, but it's 9 hours."
right, a little closer than for me in California, but
A little bit. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
very cool. So there are there any other podcasts that you enjoy listening to?
Yeah, I love my coach has one called the Mind Your Business podcast, which is, spirituality, mindset, business
Mm-hmm.
strategy fused. And then another one that I love is called The How of Within. And that's by Tracy Litt. And
Mm-hmm.
so that one is all about essentially a lot of what we've been talking about how to use these ancient practices to evolve and expand and really cultivate this inner knowledge and this inner growth. And so how that can translate to your life. And yeah, those are two that I really like.
Awesome. And so you help people to guide them through how to meditate and how to amplify their morning routine. And can all that information be found on the website as well?
Yeah, well, if you go to Gift from Megan, I
Mm-hmm.
have an Amplify Your Morning Routine checklist that you can basically use to do what we were talking about here so that you can make your way through those three pillars as well as create a routine that really feels supportive and aligned for you. So that's at Gift from Megan, and then we'll be connected and I can share more resources and tools and answer any questions if you have any.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, I'd like to wrap up the podcast here with a kind of a silly question.
Okay.
If you're up for it,
Okay.
what's the weirdest thing you have in your fridge right now?
Um, am I allowed to open it? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, there's a glass full of turmeric, which is kind of weird, but not really. Um, yeah, that's probably the weirdest thing, I guess. I don't know. I mean, dog treats, but that's not that weird. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. That works for me. Well,
Okay.
thank you so much for coming on today. I really enjoyed speaking with you. And I'm
Thank
definitely
you
going
so
to
much.
check out your book. I want to learn more about the seven branches of yoga.
Awesome. Yes, the eight
All
limbs of
right.
yoga. Yes.
Okay. The eight limbs.
Um, yeah,
Got it.
yeah. Yeah, perfect. Well, thanks for having me on. It's been really fun chatting with you as well.
Definitely. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.